The New York Knicks overcame many obstacles this offseason, and one of those was proving everyone wrong as they went on a dominant run this year and got to a point that they hadn't been in 25 years. And even though they didn't reach the finals, it was a victory for the fans themselves, and they got a big offseason coming ahead as they look to finalize their roster and really put it to that championship push that they feel they can get to, that they saw this season. So we're going to dive in and explore the New York Knicks offseason, looking at players I think they could trade, players I think they could re-sign or potentially lose, and overall give them a grade. Now, if you guys do enjoy the content, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section, and if you are a New York Knicks fan, also let me know if I did a good job predicting what the Knicks should do or if I absolutely butchered their entire offseason. And without further ado, let's dive in and let's discuss the Knicks. So the New York Knicks, like I mentioned, after having a very, very solid season previous and having a good record leading by Jalen Brunson, felt like they needed to go out and make a big move or big splash to really take themselves over the top. And they went out and did so, bringing in a guy in Mikal Bridges to pair alongside with their core to make the Villanova Knicks. But what they didn't know was another trade was going to happen before training camp day, in which they were going to get another big in Karl-Anthony Towns to really shape this roster and ultimately change its direction for the future. Now, the Knicks went out and made this move, and it led them to have a really good regular season, 51-31, finishing third in the Eastern Conference. It led them to a very solid series versus the Detroit Pistons, in which they were able to come up victorious. That led them to the Boston Celtics, and even though the Celtics did have Jason Tatum get injured in their series, I will say that the Knicks did come behind and win both of those games fair and square to be leading in the series to basically put Boston out in 6, even with them dealing with their injuries. Therefore, the Knicks were riding high and going on to the next round, going to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years to face a team that they faced once in the past in the Indiana Pacers, and ultimately fell up short, reaching that goal of the NBA Finals, but still overall had a very successful season for the fans. If we want to look at their offseason lookout or breakdown, they are in the first apron at the moment, sitting at $200 million, but not in the second apron as of yet. But with key free agents and guys still being depleted off of their roster, it is going to be pretty evident that the Knicks will be close, if not a second apron team going into next year. Their core of Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, alongside their wings, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and OG Anunoby, looks like it will be staying pat, as all of them have been basically locked up on deals besides Mikal Bridges, and I would be shocked if he does not get an extension via this New York Knicks team this offseason. But with the Knicks only having the 50th pick in the NBA draft, no first-round lottery talent will be coming to make a significant impact, and they may see some guys like Bacome Dadier or Tyler Kolek, draft picks last year, have to take a rise due to that, or may have some competition with that 50th overall pick this season to make an impact on their roster. But without further ado, let's dive in and let's explore some players that I think could be traded from this New York Knicks squad. And just to get it all prefaced, I don't think any of the core 5 will be traded via the Knicks. Maybe if they did a trade for Kevin Durant, it would happen, but with all reports saying that that's not going to be the likely case, I don't think it's plausible. And the first player I think that could be on the move is Miles McBride, aka Deuce McBride, for many reasons for the Knicks. He obviously presented himself to kind of be that Peyton Pritchard six-man role for this Knicks squad as a high offensive creator, shot scorer, and shot maker, and playmaker as well. But unfortunately, just got outplayed by some of the veterans that played the similar position on the roster. And with him having one of the sizable contracts on this team outside of their core 4 or core 5, it does seem like if the Knicks were to make an upgrade and go out and bring in some veteran help at the wing or center position, a guy in Deuce McBride would be the piece to go out there. He also is still young, so for a team that is looking to reset, retool, maybe even bring in some young piece to try to figure out their untapped potential, a team would be willing to strike for a guy in Deuce McBride. And with the Knicks, which we'll get into a little bit, having some of those key free agents also alongside Tyler Kolek as pieces that they could potentially bring back, it does kind of point to maybe Deuce McBride being the odd man out in that rotation. And then the next guy I want to talk about is Mitchell Robinson. Robinson had some great playoff highs and obviously some playoff lows with some missed free throws over some games, but he still is an impactful rim defender and still is one of the better rebounders across the league when healthy. With the New York Knicks, we saw them run double big alongside him and Karl-Anthony Towns and see to their work, but also we saw Mitchell Robinson come off the bench in the series versus the Boston Celtics and also see it having some dominant performances being as a rim protector and paint beast. I do think Robinson, once again, again, being one of those contracts at around $12-13 million is one of the tradable contracts outside of the core 4 or 5 that the Knicks do have that they could look to use on the open market to maybe bring in a little bit more of a veteran key piece. With Robinson also having some injury history over his past, maybe the Knicks do want a more solidified guy that is going to be more consistent for them in these rotations. It ultimately does come down to the fact of what the Knicks truly do value, because if they are giving up a guy, Mitchell Robinson, they only do have one center on their roster in Karl Anthony Towns. So maybe this is the case in which the Knicks do keep a guy in Robinson, but it also depends on what their new coach is going to be and what type of play style he wants to run. Because if he wants to run the double big and prioritize that, I do see Robinson staying a little bit more and being an impactful piece with Josh Hart coming off the bench. But if this new coach wants to run Karl Anthony Towns at that center position and maybe go out and try to get a defensive power forward alongside these wings, then maybe a guy like Mitchell Robinson could be on the trade block. And like I talk about with many of these teams when looking at the draft class, since the Knicks do not have a first-round pick, we are not going to be looking at the potential picks that they could take. Now, once again, with pick 50, I would like to preface that they do need some wing and big man help, so maybe that's where they do look here in the draft. But something to keep an eye on with the New York Knicks, most likely at the 50th overall pick, it's going to be a guy on a two-way contract or a fringe rotational piece trying to make an impact. But we'll have to keep an eye out because they could get a sleeper at pick 50. All right, let's look at the free agents here for the New York Knicks. There are a plethora of them that we're going to dive into. The first one that we're going to be looking at is their big man, Precious Achiuwa. And like I kind of mentioned with this New York Knicks team, Achiuwa is one of the only kind of bigs under this roster. A little bit of a tweener, kind of plays that 4-5. I would say is better at a power forward position. And ultimately just didn't really fit in with New York here. Didn't really get to see much play here as we got deeper into the playoffs. And that's very unfortunate for a guy like Precious Achiuwa. And once again, with the Knicks team being close to the second apron, I do think Achiuwa will gain more than a veteran minimum contract out there on the market, which will allow him to kind of be out-taxed by this New York Knicks squad, which means, once again, that kind of losing a big man, which is another key hole with this roster, is impactful for the Knicks to really identify that in the draft or via another trade or even in free agency with some veteran guys to really solidify their big man core to try to figure out who can play some of these backup big man minutes, because Precious Achiuwa, unfortunately, was just not the solution that the Knicks wanted this year. I wish the best for Precious on his new team, and I do think he can make an impact on a new roster in a new kind of setting. Alrighty, and then here it comes. Talked about Deuce McBride and how he could potentially be out of the market because there are some key veteran free agents that the Knicks do have that play this position, and DeLon Wright, Campaign, and Landry Shamet. So DeLon Wright, a little bit more of a defensive playmaking type of guy for this New York Knicks squad, but made some really key impacts for them in the playoffs, had some big games alongside Campaign and Landry Shamet. Now Payne and Shamet, more shot creators, more scorers, and that's where I think a guy, once again, in Deuce McBride could kind of be on the way out, because if they already have Tyler Kolek, they like Campaign, they like Landry Shamet, and they feel confident they can bring these guys back on the veteran minimum contract. Why would you rather not have two guys making the same amount as Deuce McBride playing the same role than having a guy in Deuce McBride on the roster? It just makes ultimate sense for the Knicks. I do see a little bit of a market for these guys, so maybe all three of them don't initially come back to the New York Knicks, with them all kind of playing some solid roles as veteran pieces, and with the Knicks being a big market that will attract these veterans, and not only just that, make an impact to find them a role when they are desperately needed. I could see all three of these guys realistically coming back here and trying to compete with this core once again. Like I mentioned, the New York Knicks, with free agency here, they also do have some other guys out there. Errol Porty, who is a very big impact player on a team option. I expect him to be back. Maybe they do bring back PJ Tucker, but besides that, guys like DeLon Wright, Campaign, and Landry Shamet all deserve to have a voice back here in New York, because I think that they can all be those supplementary shot creators, scorers, and supplementary pieces for the Knicks in their bench unit or core to be sporadically used when they need them the most, or when one of them is cold, the other can really kind of come in to kind of gainer that offensive momentum. So that's going to be it, talking about the New York Knicks. A little bit shorter than the other videos. Sorry for that. I don't really have much to say about this New York Knicks team because they went out and made a lot of moves last offseason, and it makes sense for them to kind of keep this core and to kind of keep it moving forward. Once again, they were very close in the Eastern Conference last year, and with the Celtics being injured going into this season and looking to have to shed some salary, and seeing a team like the Indiana Pacers make the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference, it feels like a lot of these teams going into next year feel like they can do that with the core that they already have. We saw Orlando go out and make make a move for Desmond Bane. We saw New York kind of keep this core already. Cleveland's going to keep theirs, it pretty much seems, and it does look like the Knicks will be in those conversations around those top teams if they do keep this foundation to be a top, and I don't see why they would break that up, especially with bringing in a new head coach, with firing Tom Thibodeau. It's going to be key to see what that head coach does bring for this New York Knicks squad offensively, as they were seeing some limitations there in the playoffs, and how he's able to utilize what this roster is really going to play. Will Josh Hart be a key in the starting unit? Will he be a bench guy? Will they run double big? Those are the questions that we're going to have to see really come through with this head coaching hire, and ultimately kind of figure out what the New York Knicks play style is going to be going into next season to really evaluate how their roster is going to look. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. We've been breaking down every single team, looking at their offseason breakdowns. We only have 2 more left to go, both finals teams, and with the finals being tomorrow, it will be very interesting to break that down. We'll have those coming out for you on Monday and Tuesday following the NBA Finals. And then Wednesday, we have the NBA Draft, which will be very interesting to going over some sleeper guys that we really like from the draft, looking at who won the draft, who lost the draft, and overall going over some of my favorite picks and favorite fits. We'll also have breakdowns going over free agency signings, any of these trades that really come through as well. We had one talking about Desmond Bane. Once Kevin Durant gets traded, we'll have one come out about him. Once other stars are also moved in big-time deals, we'll also have videos breaking down that. So if you want to stay in tap on the NBA offseason, this is the place for you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I'll catch you guys all later. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out, everyone.